All right, thanks to everyone for joining today. My name is Topher Marie. I'm CTO at JumpCloud, where we are revolutionizing the way that people think about directory. Today, though, I'm here to talk about how technical people, other CTOs, security officers, or just anyone that cares about security, can talk to their non-technical coworkers about keeping their company safe. Basically, what I'd like to do is walk you through the security briefings I give here at JumpCloud, along with some of the rationales I give. You can take from this template and use it internally in your own organizations, customizing or extending it to fit your own particular needs. So why do we do security briefings? Basically, they're required for auditing purposes here at JumpCloud, but it's not just that. There are many attacks that come at your non-technical employees, like phishing, viruses, etc. For instance, the Target point of sales breaches a few years back were actually triggered by an email malware infection at Target's HVAC contractor. So they had some air conditioning contractors come in and they were doing work, and that company was breached via an email malware attack, and that spread up to the point where eventually Target was losing people's credit card information. So it's a pretty huge vector of attack to have your non-technical employees involved and not know what they're doing and what they need to avoid. And really, it's just to help keep our company secure. We take security very seriously here at JumpCloud, so we want to make sure that everybody knows what they should and should not be doing. What this isn't, though, is a technical security talk. This isn't talking to your engineers about avoiding a man-in-the-middle attack or benefits of TLS 1.2. This is really a discussion with non-technical staff about how to protect your company from them being used as a vector of attack. And really, it's to motivate your employees to take security seriously, to scare them straight, I guess. Many employees just really have no idea of the risks involved. You'd be surprised what they don't know and how unseriously they take these risks. So how I start this off is with some security principles. Basically, our company will be attacked. Every company is going to be attacked at some level. And it's the individual employees that will be targeted, not just the infrastructure, not just the developers, not higher ups, not the C-levels, but everybody. I call out their individual roles. The support personnel, the marketing personnel will be targeted by emails with malware in it. I want to make sure that they know that they are actually a vector of attack, and that them being compromised opens up the larger organization to attack, just like in that Target example. Having a compromised machine is a vector of attack to the larger organization, and they have a responsibility to help protect the company. It's not possible for IT or operations to protect them from themselves. Everybody has to know what they need to do in order to keep your company safe. So what I do is I've got 10 security principles, kind of like one of those BuzzFeed articles, top 10 ways to keep yourself secure, etc. It just makes it sort of digestible and approachable for everybody. Then I go through each of them individually. The first one being securing your identity. So some of these things are so obvious to us who have worked in security, but it's not obvious to everybody. First off, passwords must be impossible to guess. And the more complex is better. Talk to them about having a mixture of numbers and lowercase and uppercase and symbols, etc. in their passwords. It seems so fundamental, again, but after every time I give one of these briefings, someone will come up to me and talk about, oh yeah, I never thought about it that way. That is sort of important. I better change all my personal passwords. Or even those of us who should know better. I've stumbled upon passwords over the last 6 months here and there. Someone accidentally pasted in a Slack window instead of pasting it in the right window on their browser. Or one time I was doing some very low-level debugging, and so I came across one of my employees, my technical employees' passwords, and it was terrible. It was terrible. So even just a reminder of how important this is goes a long way. Because we have complicated passwords and long passwords, we should be storing them in LastPass or KeyPass or some equivalent because they should be impossible to memorize. They should be long enough and obscure enough and with a mix of characters. It's not something that people should be able to memorize. I talk about MFA. We use MFA wherever it is possible. Any application that offers MFA, I insist that we're using it there. Even the ones that we don't really consider to be that important to our security infrastructure. For instance, Slack. We don't ever talk about anything important, quote unquote, over Slack. So it's more of a matter of getting people into the habit of just doing the most secure thing possible by default. So if something has MFA available, you use it. I also talk about how password reuse kills you and how you need to make them unique. So it's not good enough to have one complex password that you use everywhere. Instead, you need complex passwords that are unique per site that you're using it at. I use the LinkedIn breach as an example here. So back in, I think it was 2012, LinkedIn had a breach. And okay, that sucks. Someone could take over your LinkedIn account and they'll be getting the calls from the recruiters as opposed to you. That's one thing. But really the value of that attack or that breach to bad people is not that they have your LinkedIn account, but rather they have who you are, and they can probably figure out who you are in other places too. For instance, Topher Marie at LinkedIn isn't hard to associate to my Twitter account. And then they bet on the fact that about 50% of people use the same password everywhere. So if they've got my LinkedIn account, they can just try it on my Twitter account and see if you can get in with that. So MFA does help with that, of course, but it's more important just to fundamentally have the concept that you should never reuse passwords anywhere. I do a quick survey. Raise your hand if you have one of a couple of passwords that you use everywhere or the same password everywhere. And I raise my hand. It kind of prompts people to also raise their hand, and then I say, this is a terrible idea and let's not do this going forward. All right, moving on. So that's first principle. Second principle is about securing your laptop. So a few things here, very fundamental. We want full disk encryption. We want antivirus. We insist on a strong password. Luckily for us here at JumpCloud, that's part of our product. So we use our own product to secure our internal laptops. And we're able to enforce these rules on laptop through our policy feature and functionality. So that really helps us a lot too. Next, do only company work on company machines. I'm not such a stickler that I'm like, don't ever visit Facebook when you're in the office and keep it off that browser, but just emphasize that if they're doing things like downloading video games or whatever it is, it shouldn't be on your company laptop. The more things that are going on there that aren't approved, the more likely that you're going to be infected with malware or have something bad happen. And then I talk about keeping it safe. Don't leave it at the airport or at the bar or at a cab. And this stuff happens. And all three of these things have happened over the course of my career. Not to me. I've only left my laptop in a bar once. But it does happen more frequently than we would like. And at this point, it's important to make them realize, it's okay. It does happen to people. Don't freak out about it. Just let me know as soon as possible. We'll change your credentials and we'll get it taken care of. Don't make them scared of the consequences of screwing something like this up. Make sure that they know they can talk to you about that. Next, let's talk about securing your data. So I talk about don't store sensitive data in USBs. Not something that you could lose, drop with your keys and someone finds it and takes that over. Don't store sensitive data in Dropbox or with third parties. Talk about being careful of sensitive data in Google Docs, and it's a matter of what do you really consider sensitive data. Obviously, I don't want my employees to use a spreadsheet with passwords in it. Hopefully, that's a conversation that was covered with LastPass and KeyPass, etc. But there's a certain amount of financial data. Yeah, is this something that we actually want to have at Google? What is our risk tolerance around that? And we've decided that Google Docs is safe enough for a certain class of what we consider to be sensitive data. And your mileage will vary on that. Figure out what is acceptable for you guys. Another thing is don't email sensitive data. A lot of employees don't realize that email is not secure, that just because you are sending something to somebody else, it is not, you're not the only two people who can see that information. So it's something to really emphasize. I've had passwords emailed to me because they assume, hey, only Topher will see the password on the other side, so that's fine. It's just a learning moment there. Again, this isn't the technical staff conversation, so I'm not talking about encryption of data at rest, secure communication channels, hashing, any of that. This is, again, for the non-technical staff and the very basic things that they need to know about. Moving on, principle 4, securing your email, speaking of which. So email is a huge vector of attack. Generally, this is the mechanism for recovering lost accounts. So if you lose control of your email, it's likely that someone will go in and be able to reset your Twitter password, let's say, by having it come to their email account. If they lose one of their work email accounts, you're in big trouble. I call it the linchpin to the entire authentication battle space. You must have MFA enabled. If your email provider does not allow you to use MFA, something's going wrong there. Make sure that everybody has MFA enabled. Don't open attachments in emails you're not expecting. Don't trust that an email is actually from the claimed sender. This is an important one. This is the impersonation attack, and this has been going on quite a bit, where, for instance, they'll send an email to your CFO purporting to be from the CEO, saying something like, I need you to transfer $1 million, $25,000, some amount that doesn't seem too crazy, let's say $25,000, to this account. I'm about to get on the plane, but it needs to happen immediately. Go ahead and do this under my authority. And some places have actually had that happen. There was actually a particularly large breach this, I believe it was past fall, where something like $25 million was lost this way. And they've clawed back some of that money, but it really mostly is gone because the CFO or whoever it was believed the email, didn't double check it, and just follow those rules. We've seen this email come into our company, and our CFO is smart enough not to have fallen for it. But make sure that all of your employees know that email, just because it says from X, doesn't mean that it's actually from that person. Finally, don't click links in emails like the LinkedIn invitations, banking messages, etc. Be aware that those could be malware. I guess that's all I have to say about that. Let's move on to securing your browser. The first and most important one here is probably don't accept invalid SSL certificates. When that message pops up and says you might not be doing what you're doing, someone might be listening to this conversation, there's a reason that your browser is freaking out here. It's seldom the correct thing to do, so make sure that they know this isn't just an annoying pop-up that you should say, it's okay. This is actually a very important thing that they realize that this conversation could be intercepted, so don't do it. I do talk to them about how you do see this message when you're attaching to, let's say, a hotel Wi-Fi the first time. You can see this message if you've browsed to a secure site. What you need to do is just go to a site that doesn't have HTTPS, go through their little ceremony, sign into the Wi-Fi, and then do the secure browsing after that. Another thing is recognize when it's safe to send passwords and sensitive information. I have all my employees use Chrome just so that I can have a consistent message. If they know what they're doing, if they're technical staff, I'm fine with them using a different browser, although the technical staff seems to prefer Chrome anyway. But I tell them, look for the little green lock up there. That tells you that your conversation is secure. If it's HTTPS with the green lock, no one's going to be able to listen to your conversation. No one's going to be able to see any passwords or anything that you're sending. And also you know that you're actually talking to mail.google.com. So that's why also I say don't just click on links that come from emails, because you don't have the chance to see that that you're actually talking to who you think you're talking to before it does redirection and has the ability to do some wicked things to you. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about securing your phone. So since email is attached to your phone, if you lose control of your phone, if you leave it in a bar, you could lose control of your email, and as we discussed before, that means you could lose control over a lot of your accounts. So it's very important that even though these phones, these things that we carry around and often drop or leave in a cab or whatever, even though it is so convenient to have your email attached to the phone, we need to make sure it's secure still. So have a PIN or a passcode, and even more importantly, or equally as important, have it wipe your phone after too many bad attempts. If you have a 4-digit code and it doesn't wipe after a certain number of bad attempts to figure out that code, it doesn't take that long, 10,000 entries, in order to open up the phone anyway. So make sure that it wipes. And just have a remote wipe enabled. If you lose it, go ahead and wipe the phone, and yes, that's somewhat painful, but better than having your company compromised because of it. And have Find My Phone enabled too, as long as you've got that functionality available to you. Again, if email is attached to your phone, that's a critical vector of attack, and we need to be able to mitigate against that as best as possible. Next, securing our office, our physical infrastructure. I want to make sure that people know it's okay to confront unknown people doing unexpected things. If you stop in the office after hours and there's someone running cables, or if someone comes in and starts to walk out with a laptop, it's okay to confront them. We'll back you up on that. And if they're not comfortable confronting that person, just escalate it to somebody who is comfortable. Talk to their supervisor, talk to me, I say, and I will either say, oh yeah, that's Jim, he's a new contractor, or I have no idea who that guy is, let's go tackle him. We'll figure that out. But make sure that they know that confrontation, if they're not comfortable with it, that just bring it up with somebody else who is. I also have everybody erase information from whiteboards, and I emphasize that this should be all information. Even if you don't think it's something that's important, just get them in the habit of thinking about security all the time and not having to look and say, okay, is this something that could be exploited? Is it not? Just default to erasing the whiteboards all the time. Don't leave sensitive documents unsecured, and set your screen to auto lock. That should be true for the laptops as well, and we have this thing in our company where it's okay to Hasselhoff someone. We call it Hasselhoffing when you've left your laptop open and someone goes by and they will change your background to a picture of David Hasselhoff, which is somewhat unpleasant to discover. But it's just sort of a playful way to get people to realize, yeah, okay, I've screwed up and I need to be more cognizant of leaving my laptop unsecured. And it just reminds them about security in general. Moving on, securing our intellectual property. And I made a $ bag here because I didn't really have another symbol that really represented that very well. And this one is a little more geared towards technical people, but it's something worth speaking about to the entire company. Anything you build for the company belongs to the company. That includes scripts, webinars, icons, logos. Any of that stuff really does belong to the company. And any open sourcing of anything needs to be approved and vetted. We need to make sure that if something is open source, well, it makes sense financially for our company to do so, and also that we're not leaking information that we don't mean to be leaking there. Don't fork your repositories into personal accounts is something I also bring up during this section. Next, let's talk about securing our conversations with the outside world. So this is strategies for support and sales, etc., to properly identify customers and authorized parties. Know who they're talking to. Never give out information to someone that initiates contact with you. This is true in your private life as well. If your bank calls you and they say, hey, so this is Jim from your bank. We've got a problem with your account. Can I just get your account number really quick to verify that you are who you say you are? No, Jim, you called me. Don't let them initiate the conversation and pull information from you that direction. I also talk about how we will be targeted with social attacks, where someone will call in and purport to be one of our customers, or let's say the CEO of one of the companies who's our customer, and he says, I need you to reset my password right now. I'm locked out. I've talked to your CEO. He says this is okay. You need to do this right now or I'm going to get you fired. And he's pressuring you and he's bullying you. I talk about how it's important, and that's the vector that people will use to attack you in social attacks, is to be very insistent and make you uncomfortable and push you around. And it's okay to say no. And if you're not comfortable saying no, you just escalate it to somebody who is comfortable to say no. either your supervisor or push it up to me or push it up to the CEO, and we'll get that worked out. But don't let yourself be bullied. One thing that I say very often is if they need an answer now, the answer is no. Let's move on to the next one. Finally, secure social networking. Social networking is a necessary evil in the business world. I tell them to watch for malicious links, obviously, and I bring up that they can be targeted because of the connection to the company. It's easy to see, let's say in LinkedIn, who works for JumpCloud, and then find that person on Twitter or Facebook and befriend them or bully them or whatever it is through that mechanism too. So just use good judgment in who you're working with, and that's not necessarily just for security, but also for their personal reputation, our company's reputation, etc. Your identity is collated via all of these services, and some of them are just straight up evil stuff, so I tell them to be wary and just be cognizant of it. Some people don't even think about the impact that social media can have on their lives outside of just that little circle. All right, so those are the 10 principles. Now let's talk about what happens when you screw up. And everybody does screw up. So I want to make sure that they know that when something goes wrong, it's okay. It's important that they feel safe about telling you when they've screwed up. You would much rather have them talk to you about, oh, I think I may have pasted my password in Facebook and sent it to all my friends and followers or whatever. More important that they tell you about that and you can take the mitigating steps to fix the problem rather than them cover that up. So tell them to contact you immediately. Tell them they won't get in trouble for a mistake. And that should be true too. Everyone screws up. So long as it's just a mistake and not bad judgment, it should be fine. Make sure that you can recover from those situations. And it's better to ask a stupid question rather than to endanger the company's security. I've had people say, hey, so I signed in from this new browser and then I got an email saying someone signed in from a new browser. Is that a bad thing? No, that's not a bad thing. And don't make them feel stupid and don't make them feel belittled and don't make them feel like they can't talk to you about anything. You need to be a confessor to your employees. Because everyone does make mistakes. And I like this little cartoon here. I've had that thought myself, but not for a while. All right, so again, this isn't a conversation for your technical people. But it's amazing how just a little bit of very fundamental discussion of security can make a huge impact on your non-technical staff. It empowers them, it makes them feel more in control, and it makes them feel like they can actually have an impact on keeping your company safe, which is absolutely true. So with that, thank you for your time today. And if you have any questions or concerns, please feel free to contact me at Topher@jumpcloud.com or Twitter, Topher_Marie. Thank you.